Hey, welcome to Star Wars Force Time. Please like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Got a question for you. Did you know that there was a character in The Rise of Skywalker that used the word beautiful when describing Kylo Ren? And if you're thinking maybe it was said by Rey or Leia, no. It was actually said by Allegiant General Pryde of the First Order when he was having a conversation with General Hux on the sidelines of the battlefield, while Kylo Ren was laying waste to the locals on Mustafar while he was in pursuit of obtaining the Wayfinder so he could make his way to Exegol. Interesting, right? I thought so too. This was actually a filmed scene in The Rise of Skywalker. However, it got deleted. It is in the novelization. So the opening sequence of The Rise of Skywalker, we see, like I said, Kylo Ren is on the battlefield, and he's just decimating the protectors of the area in which leads to the Oracle, who points to the location of the Wayfinder. And the location that they're actually in is called Kovacs Fen, of which, if you've played on Oculus Quest VR, Vader Immortal, the whole premise takes place on Mustafar and talks about Lady and Lord Kovacs. I'm not going to spoil that if people haven't had the opportunity to play that VR game, but it's outstanding. I enjoy it immensely, and it's good. And the dojo for lightsaber practice is amazing. Highly recommend it. So we're in Kovacs Fen, and Kylo is just... he killed everyone on the field, as we can see in The Rise of Skywalker. What we didn't see in the film, though, was the portion that got deleted, which has Allegiant General Pryde and General Hux having a conversation as they're observing Kylo on the battlefield, fighting the locals with his lightsaber. And we're not talking about, just general citizen locals. We're talking about the official protectors of the secret knowledge of this area. And we know that because of how it is described in the novel, the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker by Ray Carson. And we also know for a fact that these scenes were filmed. And when I say scenes, I'm talking about the lead-in to what we saw in the film where he's fighting. And just before he reaches to grab the Wayfinder, there is another scene that preceded that, which gave him the location of the Wayfinder, and then he goes and pulls the Wayfinder. So what we got in the actual film was a shortened version of what actually was filmed. The Webbish Bog was a practical effect that no doubt they were going to spice up with CGI and whatnot. It's interesting because we just got a very condensed version, and if you recall, before The Rise of Skywalker came out, there was a different runtime that was about 20 minutes longer than what we received. And J.J. Abrams himself confirmed that we had a shortened version of the opening footage. As a side note too, the first chapter of the novelization is actually the scene in the film where Rey is meditating in the jungle. Also, we know for a fact from the comments from not only the director but the editor that things were finessed, shall we say, last minute in the editing room. It's unfortunate since it was filmed and it's not an excessive amount of dialogue. Let's dig into it a little bit via the novelization, since those official deleted scenes have yet to be released. Hello, Disney Plus, maybe you'll consider. Okay, so going to chapter 2 of the novelization, I'm just going to read a very small portion of the dialogue and the character point of view while they're observing Kylo on the battlefield. General Armitage Hux watched from a safe distance as Supreme Leader Kylo Ren and a squad of stormtroopers cut a swath of blood and destruction through the pathetic Mustafarian colonists. They battled through the gloomy woods of Kovacs Fen, one of the few patches of this hellscape of a lava planet that was cool enough to support native growth, if you could call this native growth. The barbarian colonists were failing to put up a decent fight. Their archaic halberds and broadswords were no match for the technical superiority of a good blaster, or even, as Hux had to admit, a lightsaber. Ren was a blunt instrument, a mindless dog whose current obsession was putting the First Order's plans behind schedule. The general was half tempted to wade into the fight himself to hurry things along. "He's almost beautiful to watch," mused Allegiant General Pryde, standing tall beside him. The older man had arrogant blue eyes and a high hairline that seemed immune to perspiration, even in a hell climate like this. "Don't you think?" Hux refused to gratify that with a response, because true beauty came from discipline, from order. So it was almost against his will that he found himself mesmerized as Ren met a barbarian's charge head-on, cloak flowing, mist swirling around him. The glow of his lightsaber occasionally snagged on his cheek scar, making it appear as though a crack of glowing lava slashed his face. It was something like out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare, as the Supreme Leader plunged his fiery crossguard into the attacker's abdomen, lifted him from the ground, and sent him toppling onto his back. Kylo Ren did not spare his fallen foe a single glance, simply rushed forward into the woods, seeking his next kill. So we've got Allegiant General Hux saying it's almost beautiful to watch him, the way he just decimates the crowd. And it's Hux, and his response is so typical because he's just, perpetually perturbed, so jealous of Kylo. Even in that moment, in the height of his jealousy, he is still kind of taken by him, but just not as ready to admit it as Allegiant General Pryde. And as we know, that scene where we see him battling the locals, these colonists protecting the area, was one of the first scenes that Disney Lucasfilm released in the trailers. And the way they played it, slightly in slow motion, it was extremely dramatic and quite beautiful to watch. So I have to agree with Allegiant General Pryde. So Kylo turns suddenly to look, and it's cut to him reaching the Wayfinder. What happened, though, in between that time was actually he sensed the oracle that was located in that area. He went to this entity, which is a very bizarre entity. A huge, giant head that kind of looked like a baby pig. And on top of the head was this huge, gigantic spider. And we get to see this briefly in the Rise of Skywalker art book that will be coming out shortly. It was supposed to be out already, but it got delayed. So he approaches this entity where we've got this, in a swamp, in a bog, this giant baby pig head with this spider on top of it that speaks to Kylo. It's the spider that actually speaks. Do know that there was a scene filmed in which Kylo Ren approaches this oracle, communicates to Kylo the location of the Wayfinder because he was seen as the most worthy to obtain this item because he alone broke through all of its defenses, all of these local colonist barbarians that he was fighting with, weaponized with archaic weapons nonetheless, but it's the same type of weapons that you see the Knights of Ren using. The webbish bog points to the direction of the Wayfinder. Back to the film, he locates it and he obtains it. I mean, in reality, we're not talking about 20 minutes that supposedly was cut from the initial film. So I'm still so curious as to all the deleted scenes. I would have liked this little addition into the story. I don't think anything about it seemed hokey or out of place. It would have given a moment of depth and appreciation, quite frankly, to the amazing job that was actually done on this battlefield. I mean, you just see that battlefield for a split second where you've got just body parts and corpses everywhere. That's intense. But there were no younglings or women that we know of in his defense, because I will have a later video about redemption and death. Let's just say I will have an opinion coming up in a video as to how I believe redemption should not have equaled death in The Rise of Skywalker. That will be a later video. It's complicated. All right, that's it for today. May the Force be with you, always.